Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. This time a scary Halloween episode. We got a story. Many of you have heard it before. The story comes from the 1980s on a peninsula of land between two large bodies of water in western Kentucky, known as the land between the lakes. Specifically, Nickel Branch Bay Area Campground, which has since been removed. You can still find where it used to be. There's a cemetery at the entrance to the road that goes to where the campground used to be. The creators are foolhardy and want to go try and find this place. But back in the 1980s at this particular location, a horrible incident occurred in which, as everybody has recounted in a million different versions on lots of different channels, something attacked and killed an entire family, a younger brother and sister and a mom and dad. They were camping there at this location. Now, according to the details of the story, which I'll give you a short version of for the benefit of those few out there who maybe haven't heard about the beast of L.B.L. It started out with the father and the son leveling the camper, and at which point this thing, whatever it was, came up from underneath and attacked them both, promptly ripping the dad's head off and tearing both of his arms and legs off and throwing them in different directions. Now, while a horrendous attacking monster was doing this, the boy was trying to get back into the camper, and just as he opened the door, it got to him and caught him. The mom saw this was happening, tried to slam the inner screen door, knowing it had already grabbed the son. It then promptly tore through the door. At this point, the daughter apparently realized something was going on and ran and slammed the door in the back of the camper and hid in there, while the monstrous beast did its hideous, slaughterific work on the mother. Body parts and gore were splashed all over the inside of the camper when it was found after the incident. Apparently, at some point, the beast either had seen the child dart into the back, had heard her, or maybe heard her in the process of when it was finishing off her mother. It ripped the door off the back, dragged the girl outside, and apparently ate her too. When the investigators were there, they quickly found the torn up remains of the son, the mother, and the father, but it was quite a while later, as they were going around the remaining area, realizing there had to be another child there because there were young girls' clothes in the camper, but yet no young girl. And one of the investigators had blood drip onto his hat, at which point he looked up and got blood all over his face, and there was the body and remains of the girl about 30 feet up a white oak tree. And since then, people have always had this legend going around. There's been different versions of it told. There's been more additional information. Apparently there was a state patrolman who claimed that he had seen the results of the DNA that they had gotten from the attacks, and that it came back as a human, canid, and some sort of ape or primate. But nobody really knows anything beyond that. Until now, because somebody got really bored when they were spending too much time sitting around the house. They managed to actually get a hold of one of the people in the investigation on this murder scene, and was there when the powers that be reeled in the attacker. And so we don't have to really guess what it was that did that. And so now for the rest of the story, please welcome to the show Mr. Jerry Klein.
Welcome, Duke.
So I guess what happened now is that you have been curious about this story for a long, long time, and you decided to go try and find some more information on it, and you pretty much hit the jackpot. You want to tell everybody what you found, how you managed to get this information, and what actually it is.
Well, I was just speaking about it on, my YouTube channel, and one day I was talking about, the Bigfoot Outlaws and their outing they had at, because I wasn't there, but I know somebody was, and a couple other people out of Pennsylvania. It was at the meeting down there at the L.B.L, which is what they call the land between the lakes. And so one day, my Gmail account comes up all the time. Somebody wants to talk to me or this, that, and the other. That is from, that messages me or, sends messages on YouTube, Facebook, or whatever. A lot of people just do it through my Gmail account. And I got this guy, it was on there, and he got on there and he left this great big long just a paragraph on there. Said, I don't know if you want to talk to me or not. That's fine. Here's my phone number at the very end where he said. And the guy told me he was 71 or 72 when he did an interview with me, but wouldn't do it on live. Wouldn't do, let me record it. And he said that he was a Kentucky DNR officer back during when the L.B.L happened of the incident, the first one, not the second one. There was actually a second one, and of a deer bow hunter, which is an older gentleman too, but he's been there for years bow hunting. And but that story did not really get into me because this gentleman retired right after what he had told me. And the way he started in with it, I read what he had to say on Gmail, and I just called the guy. And he confirmed where he lived down there in Kentucky. And, I Googled it all up the next day before I wanted to make a good confirmation of an eyewitness, and this guy seemed legit as hell, and so I took his story that night. This guy told me right where he lived. He lived 2 miles from the L.B.L, the entrance. He actually sent a picture of the entrance and showed his house and everything on Gmail account. So I was on there for quite a while. I'm talking 2 or 3 weeks with this guy, getting information until I find, I called him on the phone and I'd read everything he'd post on there every day. And then he was telling me that he said, when this occurred, they got a call and said that he had heard the deputy sheriff's department being called in, but as far as wildlife and management had not been called in until they figured out something had happened here. So he got a call on his phone. He got there, I think he told me it was right around 3 or 4 in the evening of that day. Could have been later, and I don't remember.
So this was just luck of the draw, basically. This guy got tapped to go there because he was the closest officer to it when the shit happened.
Yeah, well, they called in every officer.
Right, but I mean, he was like Johnny on the spot because he was...
Yeah. And even ones from across state line, a couple days after that, from Ohio, West Virginia, is what he was telling me. But then it got to this point to where, the one deputy sheriff had looked up, he had blood dripping on the rim of his hat. And he looked up and it started hitting him on the forehead, and they seen a little girl. All right. At one point I said I didn't want to mention this KYD and officer's name. It's his name. When he gave me the report was probably, he was 71. I'm sure, he's not on social media or anything much anymore. I don't know. But I'll give the name to this guy. His name is Robert, but he went by Bob. Elkins was his name. And he was Officer Elkins of the KYDNR. And he's the one I got the report from. And this is what he was telling me. After they got the command center set up, they had brought the Army in. They didn't bring in the National Guard. They brought the Army in.
Right.
The deputy sheriffs had set up one end of the road where the road crooked up around the hill or the mountain, whatever you want to call it. And the other deputies set up down at the other end, and they blockaded that whole road off. But when the feds got there, they sent all the deputy sheriffs home, and the local police. They brought in 6 coroners because of, let's kind of slide back a little bit. When the attack happened was a man, his wife, and his son, and they seen a little dress, and they said, well, there's got to be a little girl here. So as we back up on that a little bit, before all this happened, there was a camper down the street that there was only 2 people camping down there at that time. It was early season, and these people come down through there with just turn around so they can park closer to their camper at the door, aiming to their car door, aiming to their camper. They seen the camper in shreds, and so they drove back into town and got the local police. But when the deputy sheriffs and the local police got out there, they had looked around and found the man deceased. The wife was deceased, shredded to pieces. The little boy had been partially eaten on and strode out through the woods there. And it's terrible the way he was describing all this, because the way he was describing it was written down. I didn't actually get to hear him say it, but I could tell he was pausing. This Bob Elkins, he was pausing in between all this. So I could tell he was getting very emotional. And you remember too, this is where it comes in play too, is where he told me, don't go back out there where you see that juvenile in that picture that I got with the 2 nubs on its forehead. Okay. He said we'll get to that on this creature. But this was what he was explaining to me ahead of time. And then as he was going on, I had wrote it down, and since then I've lost all the paperwork where I wrote down, and I've lost his Gmail account since then. But let's get back. one of the officers and deputies was walking around the site where the incident happened. So they found a little dress, and they was frantically just running around there going, okay, there's got to be a little girl here. And as on the L.B.L, YouTube site, everybody that's put it up, they've got similar stories, but not as detailed as mine. I got mine right from the horse's mouth. But anyhow, it was I think it was a deputy sheriff that looked up because he had the brim of his hat went around and looked up, and a droplet had hit his hat. And he looked up, seen a little girl up there, 40 feet in the air in the crotch of a tree. Well, this is what other stories didn't tell that this man told me was over in another tree that was really close, but it wasn't, right up against it, had the little girl's arm in it, partially eaten off to where, I'm not wanting to get into details of that, because he did. But, so anyhow, let's skip from there to, okay, there was calling corners from 6 different counties, 2 out of Tennessee. So when they got these guys up in there, they had run the local deputy sheriffs and police department out there. The feds had come in. The Army had come in there and just took over. Well, they did call the deputy sheriff, county sheriffs back to set up on the ends of the roads where they could go in there and do a blockade, just to keep public out of there and get their work done. And then they called the ODNR officers back in there again, and they wanted them in there that way that they could try to identify if anything they dispatch. Now,
KYDNR. You said ODNR.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the KYDNR. I'm used to OD. I'm here in Ohio. But anyhow, the KYDNR. Bob was called back with all the other officers. So they was all up in there at the command center that they had set up right at the trailer. They had taken, and they had even made the people was camping next to them there, which I don't think they had to make them. Those people probably packed up as the officers and deputy sheriffs figured out what was going on there. They probably said, well, it's good time to leave. After that they had been spoken to, would you guys, involved in this or this? No, once they found that out, they was out of there. And I don't blame them. So as they're up in there, they come back the next day. They had, they did have a 1.5. He did tell me. He couldn't tell me at the time of what kind of military vehicles was up in there because it was kind of mixed. It was, he said they had so much equipment on them back then. He said he couldn't tell what the heck they were. But as he's up there, and then the deputy sheriffs, they're getting a lot of walkie-talkie talk going back through everything. They had actually sent snipers up in there. Sent snipers up there in ghillie suits and everything. They got up in there, and then all of a sudden they could hear a gun storm coming across everybody's mics on their, back then you had walkie-talkies. It's not like they was using their phones for this and that and the other now, and they probably had the bigger style walkie-talkies too, bigger antennas like, when I was in the military. But, oh man, I'll tell you what, he said that it sounded like that it was an actual gun raid going off of Normandy Beach back there. That they was actually nailing this thing from all corners and hitting all points. There was supposedly a pillbox that they built back there for military maneuvers back in there. And but they don't know if that's where the creature was staying, but there was a cliff face with cave systems back up in there. Now, from what I understand, how they tracked this creature down, they found bits and pieces and blood droplets going to where this creature went to. Okay. Then they finally got the call. He said, we don't know what this is, but we have dispatched.
What word did they use for it? Subject or creature?
He told me back then, he said just subject or something to that effect. They didn't realize even what they had. They didn't know if it was a guy in a monkey suit or whatever. And then they start getting calls over the radio saying, oh my God, this thing smells horrible, you know. And
I remember you telling me that either him or one of the other DNR guys was asking him, you know, what is the subject? Is it a bear, etc.?
Yeah. He said, is it a bear? Is it, you know, what type of bear is it? Or, you know, well, when you got military there, they don't really know. But when they're dealing with something, a creature of this size, you know, that doesn't resemble bear, or what, they're not going to know what to say, you know. So he said they just sitting there looking at each other. The DNR officer was, they're just, you know, Bob and all them other guys, they just sitting there and all going, we've got to see this. And he thought the feds was going to actually push the DNR officers out.
So the guys on the scene that had shot the thing told them via walkie-talkie that it wasn't a bear or a mountain lion or anything normal.
No, no. Eventually, they come out as they was going down with the cable, and he heard on his walkie-talkie, as he told me, he said, they was going down with the cable off the 2.5 to hook onto this creature, and that's what they said. We're hooking onto this creature. They did not say bear. They did not say wolf, coyote. They said a creature. And all they could say before that was that it had a horrific stench to it over the mic, over the air.
How'd they hook onto it? Did they drop a cargo net or something?
No. He said they took and just wrapped the cable around the back feet and drug it up the side of the mountain. And then what they did once they got to the top, he said they backed the truck up, pulled it around, and then backed back up to it. That it took 7 servicemen, Army servicemen, 7 of them, to load this creature up. And he said that one guy was actually gagging and puking from the putrid smell from this creature. So they got loaded up in the truck. Said it was probably another half an hour to 45 minutes by the time they got off the mountain or hill, Appalachian Mountain there, back down to the command center. And they did allow Bob and the other KY DNR officers there to evaluate this creature to see if it's a mutated bear or what it was. So, hold on a second, I get me a drink of coffee. But anyhow, it started getting a little cold on here. So anyhow, they got the creature down there, and they all jumped up. And it was a covered truck. He said it didn't have, open sides on it. They had a tarp with, But he said once they pulled that back and got some light in there, they got to get up. They flipped the tailgate down on the 2.5. And when they went up in there, this is how he identified it to me. It had 2 tufts of hair coming up on its head, but it had 2 nubs right there on its forehead where there was no hair. He said it was black in stature. Even the skin was, the fur was. but it had two regular ears like a human on it. But the tufts coming up made it look like it had two ears sticking up. He said there was so much blood coming out of its mouth, but they keep cleaning until, because the blood coagulated by then, it could just quit bleeding. Because once you're dead, your heart don't pump no more blood. They said, and there was military officers up in there just pulling the blood out of there, and you could see a set of canines on this creature with regular teeth, but then they opened its bottom jaw up, and the head was massive on this creature. It was freaking massive. And it said when they opened its bottom jaw up, they could see a regular row of teeth up inside, kind of like ours, in behind where the canines was. And then the teeth that was up in there. And he said they all was kind of jagged. So, and then he said after that, they looked at it and they just kept telling the feds that we don't know what this is. It's not a bear. And, you know.
One more detail. What kind of a face did it have? Did it have a flat face? Did it have a big nose, small nose, snout? What did it have?
Yeah. He said it had a little bit of a muzzle, but not like a bear or a dog snout, but just a little bit of a muzzle. Because he said its bottom jaw kind of set back in, but the nose, and its nose is a lot wider, come back out, but did have like a padded end of its nose like a dog. But it just did not come out that far, you know, the way he was describing it. And then he got to tell me about the nails. The nails was very long on this creature. The toenails was very long.
Did it look like it had actual toenails, or did it look like it had talons on its fingertips? He got a close look.
Hey, I did not get into detail asking him that. He just told me it had long fingernails on it.
Okay.
Long fingernails. Pointed ass, long, dirty, nasty fingernails. Man, when I was reading this guy's email, it's like I had scroll and scroll. It's out. But I've lost the details so far, or because it's been so long since I did that video, and I got that witness account from him. And then the toenails, he told me, was the same way. The toenails is probably, he said, 3 to 4, 3.5, 4 inches long. The toenails, but they was dirty and nasty, caked up. But its feet looked like big human feet, just overly large feet. The way he described it to me, overly large feet. But the legs was massive, the shoulders was massive, and he said the rib cage, you couldn't really tell, because he said they had center massed this creature.
Yeah, I bet they blew most of that part of it away. Did he get a chance to look at the lower extremities? Did it have a tail? Did it have hocks like a dog? What were its legs built like?
I didn't get into detail asking him that. All he did tell me it had male genitalia. It's all he could tell me that. And he said, when he was up there examining with the other DNR officers, and they actually had coroners up there that was scratching their heads, he said, was up in there. He says these guys holding handkerchiefs over their mouths and nose from the putrid smell from this creature. But the coroners just walked around that thing like it wasn't nothing. They just got looking at the feds and stuff. As the feds got up in there and got their look around and everything. But then the feds started taking pictures of it and everything. He said, I wonder why they're taking pictures. Why they just go run down the road there and roll off in the ditch or something? You know? It wasn't making no sense, what he was telling me. Now, on my video I did not get into this much detail, but like I said, I had to scroll, and he had so much more detail that I've lost since then. But I do remember. It's hard for me to talk about this story because I got so much detail from Bob, Elkins, Robert, that I just, it gets to you. to know that all that happened up there. The coroners even looked at the scratch marks on the trailer, on the camper trailer, which I guess was depicted. It was a pretty good sized camper trailer pulled behind that didn't need to be a gooseneck, but you could pull it behind a pickup truck, pretty heavy duty. And I guess the claw marks on there was wider of a bear's claw. So you would have to think this creature would have to have long fingernails to make that kind of scratches and rip a door off a camper, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, none of us of the L.B.L. story has even got to see any kind of documentation. And they've covered it up. You know as well as I do. They have covered it up.
Yeah.
You know,
they closed that campground, so nobody else is down there anymore.
This is what's got me stumped, dude. Is this man, an eyewitness, got to see this creature in the back of that truck, that deuce and a half. Okay. He said the first thing was that he could identify with was the two nubs on its forehead. And I've got a black juvenile something here on picture. Right there it is, hanging on my wall. Come from a trail camera. It was not fabricated. This was taken at like 6:30 in the morning. You can see a little bit of light in the background during the summertime. That picture, and there's other juveniles in there too, but they don't look like that one. And you have seen that picture of that with the two nubs on its forehead. You can see his cheekbones, eyes. It's not pareidolia. Trail cameras don't snap off pareidolia. You know, if you're panning around with a phone or a camera too fast, or somebody that goes slow and bumps around, and they'll pick up pareidolia and thinking it. That picture right there, and he's seen that picture on one of my videos that I did, and then he warned me about that. He said, whatever you got back up around Mohawk Dam, I would not fool around with that. I mean, that was his warning, you know? Yeah. And I don't know.
Well, you know, you aren't the only other person that got a weird picture like that. William Lunsford got one on one of his trail cams with something with horns on it. And,
he
thinks the Ozark Howler, and so maybe that's what the local name for this thing is. But I mean, outside of the not knowing for sure if it had a tail or what its, if its legs were like big or dog-like, this thing's description sounds more like a gugly than it does like a dog, man.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've had that guy's email up on it was on my phone. It's gone. I've went all down through there looking for his name, and I cannot find it. But I may have, I've had so many phones too. It got broke at work stuff, and then went through that process. I do remember him saying he didn't think it was laying on its back. They had it, but it stretched. He said it stretched from the front part of that deuce and a half. That's maybe about 12 to 14 foot long on the back of a deuce and a half truck bed. Its head was touching the front, and its feet was just in front of the tailgate. That's how big that creature was.
Yeah, that's really big. Holy jeez. Well, I'm glad they managed to massacre the piece of crap and got rid of him right away. But that, there's more than likely other ones out there, so everybody needs to be careful.
And I'm wondering if it's a Bigfoot Gugly mix. I don't know, or Bigfoot Dogman mix, or
straight up Gugly
from all three. I don't know.
Yeah, could have been just a straight up Gugly. They've got the ugly reputation for doing that sort of thing.
Right. That's it's got me stumped because the pictures that I got down there at Mohawk Dam by where that picture was taken, I got a picture of a dog man down the grass. And you can go to anybody out there, go to Seffi Cyrus's, Duke can put a link on a show to it, and go there where I do a comparison with a stick and just to the left is where that picture of the juvenile with nubs on its forehead, that picture was just to the left, less than 70 yards from where I got the dog man down on the ground there. You can see the ears perked up, the snout on its nose, with the two Bigfoots standing back in the swamp. Huge, massive Bigfoots. And I go out there with a stick comparison and walk that swamp after the leaves are off, and she nailed it. She went right to it, found the same tree that was in that picture there, same identical tree. She matched that and then faded that picture in and out as I was doing a comparison. And I was holding the stick up probably about 12 to 13 foot high between my body and that stick. And then you could see the Bigfoots in the background as she's fading it in and out. It's just a little bit higher than that stick. These are some big boys out there. And why is there a dog man right there? That's what's got me puzzled. There's a dog man down the grass when I snapped that picture. And I was actually taking photo shots. I wasn't filming. I would snap a picture, snap a picture, snap a picture. Because what caught my eye was when I was driving down that road, something ducked down that swamp. And it was that dog man. And then Seffi Sires still got my old howls that come from that area that don't sound Bigfootish, but I guess it could be, but it sounds more doggish, but it's not a coyote. It's not a wolf. You know, we have the red wolves here, which is just a coyote wolf hybrid. They've turned loose here in Ohio, but that house she's got on there, she did it on her computer and posted a video up of it. That was my sounds, and she gets on there and she compares it to a wolf, to a coyote, to this and that. And she said, but that's the thing, Jerry. We've never heard a gugwe or a dog man or anything howl. You know, people's probably heard them, but we can't identify them. I said, you're right. I said, but how can we identify this? Because it's not neither one of them in that category. You know, I mean, wolf, coyote, it was loud, Duke. I mean, it was loud.
Yeah.
And it didn't
that's part of the problem. Unless you actually see the cryptid make the call, you don't know exactly which one is making the noise. I mean, if you're in an area with lots of Bigfoot activity, it's like, okay, maybe it's Bigfoot. But you don't freaking know for sure. And we had a guy that was doing research over here in Michigan, Dewey Lake, and he set up an audio recorder next to where, an area where reputedly the Dewey Lake monster wanders around. And sure enough, recording of it. That's on the intro of my show.
Into Dewey Lake, but I didn't know there was a Dewey Lake monster over there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a gugwe. It's been hanging around that area since '65. They've had plenty of sightings of it.
Ooh. Yeah, I went and looked at a timber job around Dewey Lake, and I don't remember anything bad, bad feelings or anything when I was walking the woods back there, but
apparently their local monster likes to turn vehicles over because they've had 2-3 reports of that where, that's not normally a Bigfoot thing, where it's turning vehicles over. Yeah. Plus the sightings of it, and the description doesn't match Bigfoot. Matches Guggle.
Well, when the owner's son that I work with said, he was down in he was going down for boot camp. They didn't know which place to send him to, but he had went to in Missouri, and it's been so long I can't remember what place was down there. But he had a guy that was sitting in there that just got out of boot camp. Said when they was out there doing maneuvers, they said there was 6 guys sitting in a Humvee. It was all crammed in there. They said it was a sweat box. It was broke down, and they had, contacted them come out there and tow the vehicle off, and then they was going to disperse out, but they hadn't got to the point yet to do their maneuvers. And they said all of a sudden that's what the guy was telling my owner's son where I work. Said something picked the side of that Humvee up with 6 guys in it and flipped it up over on its side and run off. You know?
That would scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, Fort Leonard Wood, and they call it Fort Lost in the Woods down there. And that's where my owner's son that I work with, that's where he ended up taking boot camp at. They got lost in the woods, and he remembered the guy telling him, said, yeah, this thing picked the Humvee up on one side, flipped over with all of us in it. And he got lost in the woods, and they found him the next day. But he said, yeah, there's little marshes and swamps out there. He said, but they got rattlesnakes and everything. He said, but I was more worried about a damn Bigfoot out there getting me through the middle of the night than I was any rattlesnake or a cottonmouth or anything, you know? Yeah, Fort Lost in the Woods is what they call it.
Good stuff. Well, was there any other details of the story that you wanted to mention, or does that pretty much wrap it up?
Bob, I know he told me, he said that was his last year as a KY DNR officer, and he went into landscaping after that. He said he suffered, that he knows now was PTSD, which is back then, it's been 4 years, I think I got that story from him. But he got into landscaping, but by the time he gave me the story, he was retired. So.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be pretty traumatic. I mean, especially for somebody who's like not a big city cop doing, detective work on murder cases and stuff. You don't see lots of gruesome, hideous murders of people torn apart. And this was probably on the high end of the gruesome scale compared to what you would normally see in a situation like that. So it must have had a real impact on all poor people that had to see it and deal with it.
Yeah. They said that the woman gave the longest struggle in there. I guess the father and the son, but the daughter, the way the story went, that.
Well, the little daughter had gotten away initially. She was in a back room in the camp, and after she stopped the mom, then it ripped the door off her and got hers.
Yeah, and the father and the son was outside.
Yeah,
and then after the creature killed those two, it ripped the door off the hinges partially, but it was just hanging. But they've got the magnet screen attaches to them where you can just leave the door open and shut your screen, which is a little aluminum framed screen. But both doors had been closed, but you can see where it had been ripped open, and it just tore apart the locking mechanism on there. And it was hanging off of one hinge, and then the woman was still partially pieces inside the camper. But that's where they found a little dress, but the little dress wasn't bloody or anything. And they imagined that there was like a cabinet there in the back of the very back main bedroom, that both doors is open on it and had blood smeared off of it, like it had already been bloody when it grabbed and opened them cabinet doors. That's probably where the little girl was hiding at. The mother was hiding. They said the mother seemed to them, as I heard about the story, was more fearless than anybody. She was there protecting that little girl, This happened during the daytime, but there was only 2 people down there on that stretch, which I've seen different videos. Went there and checked it out and found the pipe on the ground there sticking up out of the concrete, which used to be the water for the campers and everything. And they still, you could travel that gravel road back up through there, but you can't camp in that area.
Yeah.
And
just go past the graveyard, drive up to the end of the road to the campground used to be. Like, that's not ominous at all. Yeah, just go past the graveyard and then go up there to where the campsite used to be. All right. Well, I think we about covered it then, brother. I'm glad to have you back on the show again. And next time we have you on, we're going to be talking about your research next time we have you on the show and showing all the nifty stuff you're finding.
Yeah, we get all this corona and elections done and over with. And you know me, I like my winters to get out and do my squatching. So,
yeah.
Coming soon.
Right on. Guys, get ready for that. There's going to be more Jerry in the field coming up here, boots on the ground, butt in the field, camera to his eye, running around, catching all that squatchy stuff we want to see and finding tracks and Bigfoot for us. So get ready for that. Right on. Thanks for being on the show, brother.
Hey, you're welcome, Duke.
All righty. And hey, all you folks out there, everybody take care of each other, be kind, try and always pay it forward, and forget about all the rest. Whatever the heck you do, do not hug the Gugwee. Happy Halloween. Be safe, everybody.